So thanks everybody for accepting that option to record. And moving along, today we move from the head center down into the body. And our centering practice will focus on taking us in and down to connect with the parts and the pieces and the wisdom that comes through sensations. And the reason that I started this way was because I really believe we needed to follow the invitations of the head, and that would be consciousness at point 5, awakeness, connection at point 6, and presence at point 7. And then moving to the body, we move into vulnerability and a deeper sense of presence at 9, an ability to look at the bigger picture, and then allow it at point 1, acceptance. So that's my thinking here. For those who know the Enneagram, know what I'm talking about. For those who don't, you can just use the words that I said. So that's my thought. All right. So before I introduce and highlight our panelists, I just want to guide us into a centering practice. And I thought maybe we would play with chakras today. So that's what came to me. If you would play with me and place your feet on the floor and find a meditative posture with the crown up tall. And maybe just bringing your chin back a little bit so your ears hover over your shoulders over your hips, and bring an awareness to your parts and your pieces. So for some people, Eastern meditation isn't for you. If that's true, it's okay. Just hold the posture, maybe keep your eyes open, maybe have a pen and paper that you doodle on. That's okay too. But bring your attention inward using your breath. Take inhales and exhales through your nostrils. Let your hands rest palms down on your thighs. It's a mudra that supports being right here, right now. And using the chakras, they're related to the points, and they start with point 8 at the root chakra. That redness of the root chakra, the first chakra, the declaration of I am, we are here now. And that exuberance that comes through the point 8 personality. Allow yourself to be right here, right now, with an invitation to be in your body with your breath, to feel your feet on the floor, your connection to the earth, your seat in the chair, your presence, your aliveness is another word for point 8. Breathe in and exhale out any tension, any resistance, any holding that keeps you from being with your breath, with the moment. And then you can bring your hands, if you like, across your solar or across your belly, your pinkies at your pubic bone, your thumbs at your belly button. We move up to the second chakra and the Enneagram point 9. And here the declaration is I feel, and it is in context, not to the heart, but to the body and how we feel in relationship with ourselves, with others. Much like the point 9 in the Enneagram, the quality of 9 to understand, to step in the shoes of the other 8 points. Take a moment to connect with yourself here, to bring that breath down into the belly, to feel the belly rise and fall. And then move the hands upward to the solar plexus, with the thumbs now at the bottom of the rib cage. The shoulders relax and tune in to the third chakra. Point 1 on the Enneagram. The declaration here is I choose, highlighting the choices of point 1. On the high side, acceptance. On the low side, criticism, contraction. Holding on to all 3 sections of the lower chakras, the physical expression of our experience, understanding our choices. I was listening to Dr. David Daniels on the audio files I shared. He talked about that's so important for the 8 in all of us to understand our choices. Moving your hands up to your heart center. Let yourself come home to points 2, 3, and 4. Fourth chakra here. The I love is the declaration. The Enneagram shows us through these points our unique expression, our value, and a remembering, an invitation to remember I am love. Love is at the core of my center. Keep feeling your feet. Keep feeling the base of your spine. Bring your hands up to your heart. Bring your hands above your heart to your throat. Fifth chakra, point 5, they correlate together. The I speak. Our panelists today will find their voice, and we will find our voice to ask them questions, to create conversation. We will share speaking together. Moving our hands up into a prayer mudra, thumbs at the third eye. If that's not okay for you, just do what works. The sixth chakra, point 6. The declaration is I see. And this seeing is what is invited at point 6, a connection to our inner guidance, to have faith and trust in what we know beyond logic. So the eyes are closed in this experience. We're seeing what we know through our third eye. We're going to drop our hands down, face up on our palms to move our attention up to the 7th chakra, this connection to divine consciousness, and it correlates 2.7. Starting our panel with point 7, joy and presence. Take a few more breaths. And when you're ready, come back to our space. My intention was that would activate our 3 centers of intelligence and help us to be right here, right now for our presentation. So if you want to see the people on the screen and the PowerPoint, because I'm just going to do a little brief overview of the body center. Just use your cursor to split your screen, and that should help you to be tuned in. So body center includes point 8, 9, and 1. It's the home of instinctual intelligence that comes through in the way of physical sensations. This intelligence gets blocked by a lack of connection with the body, to self, lack of connection with others, and a lack of connection to the world we live in. It's associated with the law of one, this invitation of oneness, union, communion, and a remembering of how everything is connected. The invitation to be and the power of the pause that we just took. It relates to the physical chakras, power, relationship to life itself. And the physical chakras support us in a sense of groundedness, of being in our body, of being connected to each other, to knowing how we're part of something bigger. The focus in the body center is on doing. It's action-based. It presents as patterns of attempting to gain control, maintain autonomy, be self-governing, and do the right thing. It has a question of how can I stand out, fit in, and make things better? And this highlights the spectrum that I hope to have our panelists flesh out. These all can be really good, or these all can cause us some issues. Moving to the type 5 or the type 8 itself. Sorry, I am a little discombobulated. The descriptors for this type is leader, protector, activist, mama, papa bear. No point is an island. No type is an island. And this type is influenced by points 7, 9, 2, and 5. So if you're one of those types, you might see some of what is talked about today in yourself. Or you might want to, because it might be a place that's asleep in you. The essential qualities of point 8 are described as strength, ego-free awareness, compassion, and authenticity. Really has a softness to it. The gifts and talents described at point 8 are dynamic, creative aliveness that presents as benevolence, caring, innocence, vulnerability, and presence. The point 8 is an advocate for justice and the underdog, making sure we all survive. There's a desire for self-reliance, to flesh out power, authority, and truth, to confront, resist, and control if need be, or when they fall away from remembering who they are. The child sensitivity is disrespect, unfaithfulness, or feeling a lack of protection. The lost message that they needed to hear more was to stay connected to themselves, to understand the power that they have and the choices that they have. This choice to be soft instead of hard. The holy idea at point 8 is universal truth and connection, oneness. The fixation is how they forget this holy idea, and it's described as vengeance, a pattern of intimidation, aggression, pushing against, belligerence, roughness, harshness, and often vulgar expressions. The basic fear is survival, rejection, betrayal, lies. The virtue, which is the heart, the holy ideas is the head, the virtues is the heart, And their gift there is innocence, a gentle curiosity, and an opening heart that allows a remembering of union, trust, and ease, and overall gentleness. I have felt that from every one of our panelists. The passion, how they forget their virtue, is through excess, lust. David Daniels said he doesn't like the word lust, he likes the word exuberance. I like that word too, exuberance. It's much more positive. But in this case, lust is a contracting state. So I'm going to stick with lust. It has a energy of dominance, a need for self-sufficiency, but it cuts out the connection. It includes an assertiveness and a competitiveness that loses that compassion. The temptation here is aggressive, opinionated stance. I kind of love that in my eights because I know I'm going to get it straight, but it can be a bad quality too. Reactivity that is abusive, bullying, stubbornness, and arrogance. And the hidden complaint or the misalignment is I have to fight. Others will take advantage of me if I don't. So I hope that gives you just a little overall idea of the type. The questions on the screen, I'm going to take the questions down. But just to give you an idea, the panelists know what they are, and I'm going to ask them. They're a little different. You know, I'm learning as I'm going, playing with the panels as I go. So they're a little different than we did in the Head Center. But I'm thinking they're going to open it up, and especially for our panel today. These people know the Enneagram, these people know themselves, and they'll tell you a little bit more about themselves as the first question is asked. But I'm going to stop that share. Did that stop the share? I meant to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So our panelists today are Heather and Justin, and I'm rearranging them on my screen. And where is my other panelist? Zena. So we're going to do boy, girl, boy, girl. So Heather, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go to Justin. Will you please introduce yourself and share briefly about your journey, your experience with the Enneagram? What brought you to it, and what keeps you living it?
Thanks for having me. Like I said before, I'm Heather Hilbert. I live in just north of Indianapolis, Indiana. I came to the Enneagram as I was leaving a pretty toxic work environment. I work in ministry. I am not a pastor. I'm a layperson, but I was leaving a toxic environment that really left me feeling like I didn't know who I was supposed to be. The messages that I received in that environment a lot of the time were to make myself smaller. Like, I need you to come into a room with less energy. Um, and so leaving that environment and realizing I needed something healthier and looking for some guidance, I think is the best word, on who do I want to be? How do I want to work on myself and become fully who I was intended to be? A friend recommended the Enneagram to me, and I sort of went in with both feet. It was a tool or is a tool that I feel like um, gifts me with the ability to not only see myself in a non-judgmental way and to examine the pieces of myself that I both love and am not in love with and working on. Um, and then since then, I think it's really allowed me to open up and identify places, even throughout my day, where I can kind of say to myself, okay, I can identify that my motivation right now is this thing, right? And be able to shift in my relationships in a more to pivot, I guess is a better word, to pivot into a different posture in my relationships when I come to the realization that I've come into the room with a lot of energy, or I am maybe expressing anger, but that isn't the feeling that I am feeling. It's yet that's what I am kind of putting out there. And so since then, I've been studying the Enneagram for about 7 or 8 years now. And I have joined the second cohort at Life in the Trinity Ministries out of Dallas, Texas, with Suzanne Stabile. And last year, we did some work on laying the Enneagram on top of family systems work, which was really fascinating. And this year, we are spending time with contemplative practices in the Enneagram, which is, as an aide, is a really big step for me to get into a contemplative space and get away from the doing and really kind of being present and in the moment. So, thanks for having me.
Thank you for all of that. You can see how rich this is going to be. Justin, same question. And then Zena and then Bob.
Well, I first started getting involved in the Enneagram in the early 90s. I think it was 92 or 93 when I was living temporarily in Seattle. A friend of mine, Jim, a five, uh, we were friends, and he thought I was a nine. And he asked if I would be on a nine panel in the narrative tradition, which is so I went to the nine panel in a narrative position. Um, yeah, whatever. And I sat in the middle and I had people on either sides of me explaining about themselves being a nine. And no offense if anybody here is a nine. So when it was my turn, I said, "What is wrong with you people? Why can't you make
Oh,
decisions?" Not making a decision is a decision. Do something. It's better than doing nothing. And I got thrown off the nine panel. They said I was an eight. My friend Jim was shocked that I was an eight. But I am. I mean, after at that point, I really started to get into it to learn it formally. And uh, I used it. I was running a I was a regional manager or director of an international company, and I was using it to not only talk with my clients, but also my employees to make sure I had the right employees in the right spots so that I wanted them to be happy. And you can only be happy if you're doing something that you really love doing and that you're in the right job. Thereafter, I went into teaching. I was teaching middle school, then high school, and I taught the Enneagram in my psychology class to teenagers for 17 years, which was a very eye-opening thing. Currently, I'm retired. I'm old, and I know that's shocking and hard to believe. Currently, I'm president of the International Enneagram Association Colorado affiliate, or Enneagram Colorado. And thank you for allowing me to be here.
thank you. Thank you both. Thank you all. Yeah, see what we have here? Such strong Enneagram presence. Zena and then Bob. Thank you.
Want me to go first?
Yes, go ahead, Zena.
Um, my name is Zaina. By the way, I found what Heather and Justin shared very interesting. I can't wait to learn more. I learned about it maybe 2 years ago. I was just having coffee with a business owner, a female business owner like me. And she, they do marketing and design and stuff, but she found the Enneagram somehow. And now, she was telling me how she uses it at work and within her team. And anytime they hire someone, they find out what they are and they welcome them in the way that they like to and all these things. And I found it interesting. She was, she was the one who told me about it. Then she got me to do the test myself and my husband and found out that I'm an 8 and he's a 2. And she started to tell me about, you know, how 8s function and all these things. And since then, I've just, it's been really interesting to me. I took the course with Nancy. That was amazing, very eye-opening. And now, so I'm a divorce mediator, and I'm really interested right now in like relationships, like what makes relationship end, how do people handle conflict, what leads to conflict. And I can't, every time I think that we can just stray away from the Enneagram and focus on other things, I get to a point where my clients, where it's like they need to learn about the Enneagram, because there's so much that you cannot access if you don't know what personality type you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm going to say your name right, Zaina. I said it
Yeah,
wrong.
that's okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. How important it is, how valuable it is in your work. Yeah.
Mhm.
Bob, finish us up on this question. Introduce yourself. Thank you.
I've always liked figuring things out. Um, I come from an engineering background, but also like a detective. At a very young age, I was working with NASA, intelligence community, um, even telecommunication companies, and doing very well. But I looked around the people I was around, and I could see they were missing something in their life. And I felt drawn to understand spirituality and relationships. And I went to, I believe, one of the most ecumenical centers at the University of Chicago, where there are like a dozen different faith groups, but there are also scholarships going on there. The Jung Center, International Jung Center, was there. And I was able to study. And I entered into ministry, but specifically to help other people, groups. My advanced degrees are in spiritual direction, not one on one, but leading groups. And my whole life, I would help groups. As a child, my favorite show was The Lone Ranger. And that's essentially what I was. I would come into a dysfunctional group and I'd help lead them through a process. And often you didn't get credit or affirmation. But I have to tell you this, I felt revenge in a positive way, turning around people's lives or organizations. It was my mid 20s that I was first introduced to the Enneagram, because I was studying with the Jesuits in Chicago, Bob Oakes and all that. But they didn't tell me how they were doing it. And to this day, it really ticks me off, because there was a secretness to the Enneagram. Um, it was later, though, I studied with the Jung Center, with the Bowen Center, all kinds of psychology. But it was someone that I really trusted who said, check out Enneagram. And that was a real gift. And it's been a journey over the past decade. I've gone deeper and deeper. By far and away, I think this is the best resource for self-understanding and helping people understand their pathway. And it's a true gift. And I'm appreciative of that. I have to say, having worked in so many different groups, I was head of spirituality and communication for Tim Walt's faith group. So I was like head of 4 million Lutherans in America. So, I worked with a lot of people all across the country and all that. And I've worked with a lot of groups, but I've never seen the level of compassion and healing that I have found in the Enneagram anywhere else. This is a true gift, and I could talk about it later, but I think this is, as Dr. Siegel says, it's part of our DNA or neurons. It's part of who we are, and we're finally catching up to that. There are signs of it through history, but it only comes when we listen to ourselves and each other.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. So the panelists have demonstrated just in this brief introduction, each one of them, that quality of leadership. But I also hope you guys notice the movement, they all talked about a little bit of movement to the two in them. They all are involved in Justin. I don't think I heard you say, but Justin was a teacher also, you know, for many, many years. He's still a teacher of the Enneagram and author. But each one of them, Zaina does the divorce support, Heather involved in ministry, Bob, same thing, history in that. So you're seeing the connection to two. I always see the connection to five also, at least in Bob. I see, the way he started his introduction. So I really want you to get the feeling of movement as we have described with the other types too. No type is an island. So starting with Zena this time, second question, why and how do the descriptors of type 8, leader, protector, activist, mama, papa bear, describe you? And are there other words that you prefer as a way to describe your personality type?
Nothing new is coming up for me. The names do describe me. When I first learned about the Enneagram and eight, I was told eight like to control. And I was like, no, like I don't like to control. But then I found that I like to control in like almost everything that I do. So it was an eye-opening for me. So yes, the leader, protector. Is protector one of them?
Yeah, protector, leader, protector, activist, mama bear, papa bear.
I think that's why, I think that the eights are always thinking of what the implications of things are. So for me, I want to help people avoid lawyers and avoid fighting in court and avoid conflict. So I create this process for them so that they don't have to go through all this. And throughout in my relationship, in my marriage, at home as a parent, I'm trying to maybe control situations or influence my kids, getting them to do chores, certain things so that in the future, they can have better opportunities. They can be responsible adults. I think I'm always thinking of making sure things are happening today because I can see the future and I want the future to be positive for me and for everybody else.
Yeah. Oh, I love how you really just fleshed out. It's not control to you.
Mm.
And it was like an awakening. Oh my God, does it feel like control to others? Because I'm just trying to ensure everybody is okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Bob, let's have you go next, and then Heather, and we'll end with Justin.
I've often been asked to take leadership roles, but usually I like to hang back and only step in to the foray if it's necessary. But protector is something that's very much part and parcel of who I am. Over the course of my life, I had anger issues at times. And I couldn't understand why other people got upset when I got angry. And it was only through the Enneagram I found out I would get angry when I saw someone else being picked on or someone else being treated unjust. And that would raise up a righteous injusticeness in me. But often I was so sensitive to it, I'd spot it before other people. That's why they couldn't understand my anger. It was the Enneagram that helped me understand this and deflate that because it's very counterproductive to get angry or get red faced or anything. There are better ways of handling it. And what I love about the Enneagram, it helps us understand the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful about ourselves. And that was an important issue for me because from time to time, if you're a leader, you're going to get into conflictive situations. And it's been helpful in learning the best way forward.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And I've heard from many eights, my daughter specifically, my oldest daughter, she's like that. She didn't like the word leader. So I'm glad you fleshed that out. And I've heard from many eights, no, I don't want to be the leader. I just do it when everyone else seems incompetent, is what she says. And I see you guys laughing. Um, Heather, what can you add to that?
I'm laughing because yeah, I feel that too. I think for me for a long time, I think others identified me as a leader before I really saw that myself. Um until I really examined, gosh, I am kind of in charge of a lot of things now that I think about it. Which, kind of sounds funny, but I was sort of asleep to, right, to my own behaviors and motivations. For me, to add on to, I agree with what Zaina and Bob's shared. I would say, for me, particularly right now in the world, the term activist really resonates with me. I am in a space right now where, as an eight, there's a lot of injustice going on in the world. And so I am trying to figure out the path forward for myself in my measured intensity about those things. How do I take care of myself while also taking care of or participating in activism for the underdog, for those that are underserved? Um, I was always described as a kind of a mama bear. I think most of my family and friends would say that. I'm a social eight, so I always wanted to kind of make sure that, my friends were okay and protected, my pets were okay and protected. I'm definitely very protective of my own children. I think probably because as a child I was not protected in particular. So my response to that, at times can be more. I have to measure that. Um, but I think the term because I sat with that question for a little bit, Nancy, and I thought, is there another term that I like? And this might be surprising for some folks when I say this, but I like the term challenger. I like challenging systems and, kind of coming up against things, which is a very eight type of thing. What surprises people sometimes about me as an eight, I really enjoy being challenged. I will seek out a challenge. And that can be in a, you know, I jumped out of a plane, for example. Like I was like, who does that? That's a crazy person. And I thought the only way to beat that fear, right, is to just meet it where it's at and do it. So I, jumped out of a plane. But I also mean in the sense that I like a challenge in terms of like difficult conversations. Finding trouble spots in a relationship and meeting that challenge of like, no, I really do want to hear your honest feedback. Like, it's okay to give it to me. Like, just be direct and honest. Because for me, where that feels very threatening for some, for me, I just feel like that's the shortest path to getting us to a better place if we just address it head on. Um, so challenger is another word that I would raise just for myself and a label that I'm comfortable wearing.
Wow, Heather, you just shared a lot, and I hope our audience really just took that in. Um, you bring to light, we were just talking about how eights don't want to be leaders, but from what you shared and from what Justin shared, we're going to go to Justin next. You just got to make a decision. You guys have that ability to make those decisions, and that's why I know with my daughter, we often want to put her in charge, even though she's not asking to be put in charge, but because of those qualities that you just shared. So, Justin, what can you add here? And I do love the challenger part that you fleshed out. So
Yeah.
important.
In addition to what has been said,
Yes.
when I was early in my life, I've always been the boss. Eventually I learned that boss spelled backwards is double SOB. So uh, I was definitely very bossy, pushing and pushing. I always had to be the best, always. In the corporate world, I had to always do the best I can do and rise to the top of organizations. Uh, and I felt usually very respected when I did that. Eventually, I learned that being a boss and a leader are two different things, but I never shunned it. I always invited it. I always wanted to be that. And I basically I took what I wanted. Uh, Later on, especially when I had my daughter and students, I was definitely more of a protector because I am a self-preservation aide with a 9 wing, and which is also called, I guess, a bear. But as a protector, not only to with my daughter and my home, being a self-preservation, protecting my home and my environment, uh, definitely with my students too. So that's about all I can add at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you identify with that Papa Bear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And we're not diving into the instincts yet, but I hope those at least who have an idea of the instincts, you're feeling the instinct come alive and that focus come to the surface. So let's go to Bob. We'll have you go first this time with the next question. Reflecting on the spectrum of your type, share an example of how and when your many gifts became your challenges. So just capturing that journey with the fixation versus your holy idea and the passion versus your virtue. So for the people to learn the spectrum of the 8.
I'm still thinking, could somebody else go? And then
Sure.
I thank you.
Yeah, sure. Justin, you want to go first?
With Bob, I definitely been looking at some of my notes here, but definitely some of the strengths are very aggressive and always going for what I want. I am very impatient, especially with stupid people. So, again, just a saying. Uh, However, at some point during my spiritual growth, I learned very painfully learned the idea of the loss of innocence. And I learned that I started earlier, I started to see the world in extremes, in uh, predator and prey, in winners and losers, uh, heroes and wimps. And certainly I was always driving toward that greater that greater part, running away from one thing and pushing to the other. But then at some point, definitely with regard to fixation and passion, the vengeance and lust. Yes, lust. And I know that you use the word exuberance, and I like that better than lust because lust normally has some type of sexual connotation. But the way that I look at it is living life in extremes, going beyond what most people would think, just pushing the envelope, stirring the pot, for example, challenging people, employees, or students to be better. Uh, Definitely early in my life, I revenge and vengeance was very big. I would always try to get back at people who were disloyal. Sounds like a president, doesn't it? Anyway, uh, but that's who I was, and I did do a lot of inner work and spiritual work, and so I was able to start to reconnect with my through the innocence with that inner child, the idea that it's okay not always being right. It's okay to feel. It's okay to be compassionate. It's okay to be empathetic. So I went ahead and live that now.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
right now an old man trying to get into heaven. That's all. And I got a lot of work.
Oh, well, I would say heaven is here, Justin. So I think you've made it. You touch upon something I wonder if one of you might discuss too, in the answers is the gender training for 8. Justin just talked about it a little bit. You know, boys are often, or in the past, hopefully it was in the past and it's not being continued, but that they have to be tough. And
Yeah,
Justin said it's okay to be soft.
yeah.
And the opposite would be true. Um, Moving to let's go to Heather, female, and then we'll go to Zaina, female idea on that, but sticking with the question too, you know, identifying the spectrum of your type. But maybe you can talk a little bit about being a female 8.
I'm a good case study for that one. This comes up a lot when I'm teaching. I talk about male 2s and female 8s and the societal expectations that we have about those typings. Particularly for me, working in the ministry world as an 8 woman, my gifts were not appreciated, right? In the traditional United States church, big C, the Proverbs 31 woman is sort of thought of as, Enneagram 2. And so I spent a lot of energy, expended a lot of energy trying to kind of fit myself into this box, this expectation that was set for me, that I was never, ever going to be able to meet. I mean, I just was, now that I'm in a healthier place, I can identify that. Um, but the message that I was receiving through that of, make yourself smaller, shrink yourself. You can't be in charge of that. You're too loud. You're too much. That's really the messages that I received. Through that, the message that I heard was that there was something wrong with me, like that I wasn't meeting this Christian idea of what a wife, mother, woman, ministry person was supposed to be. Um, so it is challenging in my work as I am in ministry currently. That being said, what I think, what I have learned and what I carry with me every day is this idea, and I think this really sums up being an 8 well. As a child, I was always described as very fiery, just a lot of energy, very comfortable around adults, um, probably more so even than with my peers. Um, very took charge, stood up for, the little guy, so to speak. And I have embraced this idea of fiery as being both a positive and a negative. And so 8s often are not aware of the energy that they come into a room with. For years, I would ask my ex-husband, like, I just don't get it. Why are people intimidated by me? Like, I'm such a nice person. Um, and after studying the Enneagram, I think I am more fully understanding that. But I think what I ask myself throughout the day when I kind of feel myself falling into some patterns that I can get stuck in is, if I'm carrying my fire with me, am I using that fire to draw people closer to me, like a campfire? Like they want to come near me and get warm and cozy? Or am I using that fire to like burn everything down around me?
Yeah.
And sometimes I just have to ask myself that question, of how am I using that fiery piece of my personality right now? And is it meeting, or is it going to take me to the end that I am hoping, the outcome that I'm hoping for? Um, because I do want to draw people in closer to me. I think socialites kind of naturally do that in a way. Um, but boy, that switch is quick when, I feel attacked or disrespected or feel like I've been lied to or deceived. And so the biggest thing that I have been working on is just taking a pause. I do not need to respond in this moment, right this second. And sometimes I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I will wait a couple days before I respond. Sometimes that pause is only about 30 seconds. But I can promise you that even that 30 seconds, I'm probably more measured than I would have been if I would have just instinctively responded. So for me, that's kind of how I like to think of that fiery side of the eight. To Justin's point, too, I think eights have to be really careful about safety. I if I'm not careful, I can literally burn myself out to the point where I will become physically ill. Um, sorry, someone was calling me. So I have to watch for that because I will expend that energy until I just feel like I don't have anything left to spend. And that has implications for my personal safety, my personal health and things. I'll give you a real funny anecdote about being an eight. I mentioned jumping out of a plane because I was like, it can't be that bad. I'm just going to do it. So I took a course. You have to, go through all the safety stuff, and they teach you how to do all of these things that you're supposed to do to keep you safe. And I was second in line on the plane. The first guy backed out. He decided he didn't want to jump. And so they pulled me up, and I was, kind of taken aback because I wasn't expecting to go first. But I got so excited about conquering that fear and the challenge of it that I actually jumped too soon. I jumped without my instructor. And so when we finally landed, this guy, I'm thrilled, right? I just had this amazing experience and I have all this energy and I'm like, woo! And the instructor walks over to me and he's like, "Are you insane? What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "You didn't even wait for me." I was like, "Oh, well, you gave us the safety talk. I figured I knew what I was doing." And then he offered me a job. He asked me if I wanted to become an instructor. So that's an anecdote about an eight that I just, in that moment, was so excited, had all this energy, this fire for this challenge, that I completely set aside my own personal safety. So that is uh, just kind of the red flashing warning light that I have to keep track of sometimes.
Love it. I love it. And I feel a little seven, a little seven leaning there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm definitely mine. I have a strong seven wing for sure.
That's so awesome. All right. Zaina, what can you add on that journey of the spectrum? That's where we're focusing,
Yeah,
the spectrum of the
yeah.
type. Great job, Heather.
I love the fire metaphor that Heather gave. It's so accurate. Um, and in a way, I'm grateful that I have this fire in me because I can use it in positive ways. And sometimes when I want to use that like fiery, burn everything around me, I can quickly do it. And, in some cases I need to because there's injustice or there's whatever, and I need to just like show up fully with that energy. And it's so easy for me to access it when other people sometimes wait for years to do anything about something that really bothers them. But I think it would be helpful for me to talk a little bit about my childhood experience because I'm very different from Heather, and yet we're both eights. Like Heather
Hmm.
talked about how she was outgoing, she was comfortable around adults, it was easy for her to be playful and active and everything. I was very quiet and I was very um, careful, and I didn't want to play with other kids so I don't get hurt, and I didn't want to I didn't have a voice. I felt like my parents never really saw me as like my unique individual. It wasn't the female male thing, which is very interesting, even though I'm from Lebanon. We're not closed off society. We're pretty open, and so I think sometimes people hear the Middle East and they think like we're all, we all live the same, or we all have the same habits. I was pretty like I lived like I would have lived if I were in if I've grown up in Canada. So it wasn't anything about like gender differences or anything that affected me, or the way, but the way that I saw the world and I experienced things as a child is more like you are like everybody else. There's nothing unique about you. So and you have to be extremely respectful of adults. So you need to kind of, again, just like make yourself smaller and fit in, especially when there's adults around, because we got to make sure that they're comfortable and they've got what they need and everything. So I think what made me 8 is just like throughout, just kind of growing up and then coming to Canada and experiencing being an immigrant. And again, like I felt like I can't be myself. And but then there's this fire in me that's just, I think I'm born with it. And with time, I became more and more like maybe aggressive, and I spoke my mind. And because I never felt like I can count on anyone to be behind me and to stand up for me or to support me. And that the whole thing with feeling like I could be betrayed anytime. And that really, really affected me and how I dealt with employees in the first years in business. So that's another story. But like that was, I think the wake up call for me was like I cannot keep thinking that people are gonna betray me because I'm making it happen without even noticing.
Oh,
Um,
powerful.
yeah. So just kind of to answer the question, what's a positive thing that could also be negative? I think I just get tired of being like the decision maker all the time. Like people want you to always make things happen, decide on things. Even if like with my staff, if I wanted to, we want to book a day, they will wait for me to like a day of fun or like, whatever, like we do things every now and then, they wait for me to, so it's just kind of like, and same with my family, but it's hard for people to know when we want to step away and when we want to,
Yeah.
lead. So they just kind of be like, you do your thing and let us know, when to follow or whatever.
Oh, such a good point, because that energy that we feel from you, unspoken, that leadership quality that you might not even be aware of, you guys have talked about that, puts people into caution. And that's very hurtful for the 8, isn't it? Yeah, and I hope the audience really hears, um you don't always want to make the decisions. You want to be taken care of too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
If I can ask you a question, Zaina, if
Mhm.
you are able to give that to someone, control over making a decision, and they make it, can you leave it there? Can you follow the decision that is made, or is that a challenge for you?
It's a challenge, and I'm actually working on it right now. Like I'm trying to, yeah, very good point, but I'm trying to work on it. What about you? Is it easy for you to do that?
No, and in hearing you talk about it, I was just realizing like there have been places professionally where I've given the decision to someone because frankly, I need to get something off my plate. And like you, I get tired of making, all of the decisions. But then my instinct is to pull it back. Like, well, I don't know if that's really what we should do. And so the learning curve for me has been just to live into the decision that has been made and whatever implications come from that. Um, Sometimes it's a great thing. I've learned something new. Someone else has identified maybe a piece of their leadership ability that they didn't know they had. But there have been times where I'm like, oh, I knew I should have said something because it didn't go well. So I just wondered if you ever experienced that too.
I think what would help me, what I'm trying to do is give enough like instructions as to like what the outcome needs to be, or what I need to see happen before I give it out. If I just say, oh, you go run with this project, like I wouldn't like the outcome, I don't think. But if I say I want it to be this, this, and that, I want this timeline in place, then it's easier for me to pass it on.
Great example of the spectrum, because there's the level of control that the that to give direction, but to allow spontaneity. Um I've heard many eights would answer your question, Heather. It depends on what they what they decided to do. So if I agree with it, I've got no problem. If it's absolutely like Justin would say, just stupid, then I can't roll with it. Right, Bob, have we stirred up some ideas?
You know, I want to pick up on something Zana was talking about. I think part of who I am is the fact that up till 10 years old, I was in educational systems that were oppressive because I was left-handed. And in American educational system for many years, left-handed was treated as something very dysfunctional or aberration. And I was even at a religious school and told God doesn't want you to write with your left hand. And it formed some dyslexia and some problems. And I remember feeling oppressed. And it was only when I was 10 I entered into a different environment, actually moved overseas into an educational system that allowed me to flourish as I am. They didn't care about that. And that's really where my growth as far as five or research began. But out of that, I've always felt this need to appreciate the gifts of every person, that sensitivity. And the Enneagram has helped me so much. I believe we need all 9 types. And we all bring something important to the table. And while to a certain degree, I am helpful as an initiator or helpful in getting things moving as an 8, it's the genius of 7s or 5s or the caring of the 2, 3, 4s or the health of the 9s and the 1. Everyone brings something to the table. We need each other. I think of Jerry Maguire where he says to someone, "You complete me." Well, I believe we complete each other.
Yeah.
And 8s have a tendency to think globally. And that is the work that I do now, is in the midst of a country that I think is at war with each other. What are some pathways that we can find? And that's what I devote my energy is a little bit of the 9s coming in, but it's that willingness to step up. As you know, Nancy, I believe Western society can learn much from the Celtics, which is early history. And what I love about them is generosity of spirit, hospitality was first and foremost. And secondly, going back thousands of years, they were primarily led by women. And I believe our world would be better for it. So that's the pulpit I stand on to this day.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Take a breath. Take in this 8 perspective. All right, let's go back to Heather as answering the next question. And thank you all for fleshing out that spectrum of your type. But what else would you like us to know about your personality? What would help you if the world could just understand this about you?
I think there's a couple things. The first thing that comes to mind is I think oftentimes 8s get this reputation that we don't know how to be soft, that we do struggle with vulnerability. We can absolutely access that, but we have to be able to feel safe in doing so. And so oftentimes when I talk to my kids, all 3 of my kids are at a point that touches the 8. I have a 2, a 5, and an 8 that I'm raising. And I have learned it's really important to create a space that helps them feel safe to be vulnerable about their maybe their softer emotions. And that's true of us too. Um, where I think the danger lies, and this is what I've been able to communicate and work through in my own personal work with a therapist, is when I can access that softness, and I feel like I have a soft place to land, it cannot be used against me. It can sometimes be weaponized in a way that for an eight, the message that we receive, maybe if someone were to say, "Oh my gosh, look at you, you're so like emotional about it." I no longer feel safe. So my wall comes back up and I have to protect that, inner child, that innocence, that softer piece of me. And so oftentimes the advice that I give with those very few, because I will tell you, I think I can probably count two people that I absolutely trust. I'd be interested to see what the other eight say. I can count two people. Um, it's important that they understand that when I do that, to honor that by making it a place where when I'm done being soft, we can be done with it. I don't need you to necessarily bring attention to it, but just acknowledge it and sit with me in it and make this a safe place for me to do that. Um, because we are often thought of as being very hard and cold and bossy, and but we can access that. And when an eight can be soft with you, that is a huge gift that we are just serving up to you, because we don't do that easily with very many people.
Yeah,
So I would say that would be probably the first thing that comes to mind.
yeah. Beautifully said. And dancing around the Enneagram, to remember for all of us, the eight, while it's in the body center, has two connecting points in the head center, so in the body center, they have, 2 points, their point and the nine wing, and the focus is on survival. And then they have the 5 and the 7 where the focus is on safety. So there's a lot that they need reassurance around this safe place. And you highlighted it so beautifully. And I wanted to go backwards just a little bit to Bob's thing because my brain isn't working clearly, but I'm processing, listening to Heather and thinking about what Bob said. You brought in, because I haven't talked about that nine wing. Many of you talked about it, but I just want to highlight when Bob was talking about, this ability to see the bigger picture. That is leaning in. That's the eight softening into that realization of all the sides, so that you get a feel of how the eight is moving. It's not just the island. It has these other aspects. But thank you both for bringing that to the surface. And yes, the I often will say the eight, in my view, from my little two lens, is the eight has the biggest heart, the softest heart, and the most protected heart. And I feel like eights, I hate it when eights get picked on. And I will go to my eight and really defend. I will say, and I've said on so many Facebook posts, you don't understand the eight. You really, and everything you're saying is about you because you're not knowing an eight. They're so soft and they're so loving. And yeah, and trust takes a lot of the other person being personally responsible because the eight can see it. They cut through the bullshit. Yeah.
I like
Right.
to say we're soft, but we're wrapped in barbed wire.
Well, yeah. I don't feel that with my daughter. I feel like she's just can see through the bullshit. She's just not gonna, yeah, yeah. Justin, you gave a thumbs up. You want to continue on this idea? What else would you like us to know about your personality?
Well, I think Heather did a great job in describing it. I never heard the wrapped in barbed wire before, but it kind of makes sense. Definitely, even though we come off very hard, very aggressive on the surface, uh, to those who we trust, and trust is a very tough thing, because I learned that when you trust others, it actually means you trust others to do what they think is best for themselves, not what I think is best. And that was quite a movement within myself to understand that. But we definitely, I'm like the Pillsbury Doughboy inside. Even though I've got that hard exterior, uh, I am very giving. I I'll do anything for my friends, or when I had my students, I would do anything for my students to help them, to make them the best that they can be. Um, I'm always there for my friends when they need me. Now, I do not have a lot of friends, but the friends that I have had for decades. I am friendly, and even though I'm friendly, that doesn't necessarily mean that you would be my friend. You could be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are. It's a process. It takes time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Lena, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is yeah, others thinking that we're hard all the time and it's like they can't get through to us. And I think I think Nancy, you said this to me a lot when we were doing the class together, innocence and softness. Like we need it, and we need someone in our life. We don't need, like, Justin was saying, we don't need a lot of friends. We don't need a lot of people and stuff happening. I think we like to be focused and have a few important people in our lives. Um, but we need that from them. And for me, even like up to now, when like a friend or maybe someone I've met recently, when they show like love, support, care, it means the world to me. Like you said, like my heart just melts if somebody says, just maybe sends me a text and go, hey, I was been thinking about you. You told me you were sick the other day. I hope you're like, it just makes me feel so good, because people think that we don't need that. Like we don't need
Mm,
any of this. And we do. It's just we find it hard to express it.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. You need love too.
Mhm.
That move, the 8 moving to 2 and owning the heart. They need appreciation too. They need the accolades. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Bob, you want to finish us up on this question?
I feel that my connectivity with my 2 and my 5 are my training wheels to become a better person. It helps me rise up. And I love someone who once said, your wings are like that of an angel. It's my 7 and 9 that help lift me up off the ground. Um, I mean, all the other numbers are important, but for me, those are the critical ones that come into play. As far as heart, I want to come back to, I really get what Zaina talks about Lebanon, because often we focus on southern Mesopotamia, but it was northern Mesopotamia, which Lebanon was part of, that civilization and the root of who we are, I believe, as humanity first evolved from. And the most ancient group that I can find, going back 4,000 or 5,000 years, derivative of the Sumerians, were the Celts. And their capital incorporated body, mind, heart, and the head, in that the name of it was Ankara. And in Indo-European, that means the light of heart. Light is a thinking function to know the right direction. Heart speaks for itself, but it is also courage. And as eights, I believe we are able to incorporate that and have the courage to step up when it's necessary and to make a difference out of our love for others, our care for others. We're not going to stand around if something bad is happening or something. And to me, that's an important contribution we make to the greater whole. Is if there is a crisis, call on eights. They're the Ghostbusters. They'll show up and make a difference. We don't have to be in charge all the time, but use us, because it's in that moment I find fulfilled. As I listen to these other beautiful eights, we have so much to offer. And we want to do it out of love. But in a way, when you ask us, you're giving us love.
Yeah. Bob just described that triadic group of 825. I hope you could feel it. Heather, you have something to add?
I just wanted to comment on what Bob shared, if I could, because I love that. It does feel like love when it feels like someone's trusting me when they ask me to step in. For those that aren't eights, though, I think it's also important to know that we absolutely know when you're using us for your own means. And that can happen to us because we're very comfortable in those spaces where we often are the person speaking up against the injustice or feel more comfortable with conflict. And so oftentimes people can feel like we can be manipulated into doing that for them. And we see that. So I also think that's an important piece of what Bob's talking about, that if you're not an eight, you want to caution yourself, because if I realize that you're manipulating me into that, I mean, the trust is broken. And I mean, I'm probably not ever going to help with whatever it is ever again, because you weren't real with me. It was bullshit. So.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's like you have to be responsible for yourself, because the eight's gonna see through you better than any other type. All right, last question, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So, Zaina, I'm going to have you go first. What advice would you give your younger self, and why?
Love myself, to know that it's okay that I'm different.
Yeah.
I have a lot of, I would say, trauma and difficulties with money mindset. And it comes from, teachers telling me I'm not good enough in math, and just a lot of, you are smart, you are lovable, you are capable, you are unique.
Yeah. Qualities of the heart center. Beautiful. Thank you. Bob, what advice would you give your younger self?
Hate to be simplistic, but don't worry, be happy.
A little seven energy.
Because as an eight, I get overly concerned. And maybe the word happy it's joy.
Yeah.
There's a difference between the two. Happy can come and go, but joy lasts forever. It's like a treasure you can keep in your heart. And to seek out those places, those moments, those relations that bring lasting joy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, seven essence there. Yeah. Do you have you ever been accused of being too serious?
when I get into my deep five, yeah. Um, I mean, I I can move deep, deep, deep into five. I mean, there there was a time as a teenager I had read every book on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah,
And I'm comfortable with reading tech books and all. I am a vacuum for knowledge.
yeah,
Um, but just not any knowledge that makes a difference. And part of that is just a concern, you know, that I see people in the world sometimes making bad decisions. And it just it breaks my heart, but it drives my mind crazy.
yeah,
Like, how can you not see
yeah, yeah,
that by
yeah.
voting for this person, X, Y, and Z is going to happen, but I'm going to stop there?
Okay, thank you. I've just heard other eights say that they've been accused of often not being serious enough, and that's where that joy, that wing of seven, that lightness can come in. Justin, what advice would you give your younger self and why? And then Heather will have you wrap up.
Well, I grew up with a lot of violence as a child, uh, and it was constant violence. So I made a big change in my life when I went to therapy. I had some 3 really intense years of really good therapy, searching inside. So that what I would say to my younger self from that point before is to get therapy. Then after therapy, one, think before you react. Just don't react. It's okay to have fun, uh, and to reconnect with your inner self, the feelings that you have, and the spiritualism. Reconnect with that because it's really important to live your life, as Bob said, with joy. It's very true.
Yeah, yeah. Love that. Love that. Thank you. Oh, Heather.
So the two things that came to mind as I prepared for today, I would have said to a younger Heather, learn how to rest. Um, we our center of intelligence, we're doers. And it wasn't until I separated from my husband and didn't have my children half of the time that I really was able to identify that I did not know how to rest. Um, even when my husband would maybe take the kids out for the day, I would end up cleaning the house, using the label maker, running the errands that I needed to get done. So I mentioned at the beginning, I'm really leaning into this contemplative practices cohort that I'm doing to really grow in that area. And then the other thing I would say to a younger Heather is learn how to surrender. Um, and I mean that in twofold. It's okay. You don't have to win every time. Like you can wave the white flag. It doesn't say anything about you as a person if you don't win, but also learn how to surrender to other people, other forces, other things. Because so many of the beautiful moments that I've had throughout my life have happened when I have been able to do that. And I wish I would have learned that sooner.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful, beautiful answers. And I just want to open it up. If you guys could come back to your video, I'd love to hear what your questions for our beautiful panel is. There's Jessica. She was on our Type 7 panel. She kept it going when it was crazy.
Hi, thanks for a lot of interesting new knowledge about U8. I mean, I think I mean, Yeah, I'm a 9, so I'm not good at decisions, you know, several of you. So I just wonder when you take decisions so quick, but where do you feel it in your, when you take this decision, and do you never question yourself? Do you always know that the decision you take is the right one?
It's from the gut. It's
Hmm.
instinct. And I know that my instinctualness is much more accurate than my thoughts.
So you always take the right decision quick,
Well,
more or less.
it's not
Yeah,
always the right decision, but it is a
yeah,
decision.
yeah.
As a body type, it is experience, but also that's why I find my connectivity with 5 so important, because it's also connectivity with history. What has happened before, it's being informed. Um, I heard Aranio speak about this one time. The body types can make a decision like this. A heart type takes 10 times as long because they're going to think about the impact for people they know. And then a thinking type will take 100 times as long because it's going to look at all the different possibilities and ramifications. And I feel body types are, well, it's like body of evidence. It's what's gone on. They're sensitized with that sense of history, their history and other people's history when they're at their best. I'm
Hmm.
not saying all decisions are always perfect, but at the same time, you gotta get off the pot.
Yeah. Thank you.
And remembering, Annette, for the type 9, the reason decisions are difficult for the 9 is because of one of your gifts. The gift of the 9 is they can see all sides. They're standing at the top of the symbol. That's not an accident. They have the capacity of inclusion. It's the gift, and that's what blocks that instinctual that Bob's talking about. It's a body thing. It's there for you. It's there for you. And
Yeah.
I think what helps 9s is to know whatever decision you make, which I think is what Justin was accentuating, is whatever decision you make, whether it's right or wrong, it just gives you another decision.
Yeah, and I guess I think actually I also depending. So often if I really listen, I also know and can take a decision quickly.
Yes,
But
because you
then
have
but
it.
but then but I don't then I need to hear everybody else because they might have decisions that are a bit different. Or
Yes,
yeah.
that drive for inclusion. And
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
gonna
Back
pull
to
that
that.
out of you next week in the panel on type 9. So thanks for segueing there. All right,
I
thank
think
you for that. Go
can
ahead, Heather.
I want
Yes,
to
go
add
ahead.
something to that. It was 100% from our gut. And I laughed because when Justin said it's not always the right decision, in that moment, I'm absolutely sure that it is. Um, but I think it's also for me a little bit of the fact that we are future oriented. So I oftentimes have sort of evaluated things, know the landscape of the world around me in a way that I'm naturally prepared to make a decision. I have thought through potential implications about things that how is this affecting other people, how is this, who is missing from the table, those kinds of things. So I am more apt to be thinking more future oriented about outcomes and how things will be affected or people will be affected, that I think gives me the confidence to listen to that instinct in my gut.
No, thank you. Zaina, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's good and also can be very bad. Like I remember even the house that I'm living in now, I walked in and I said to my husband, it's too dark. And then we started to do like the walkthrough. And then for some reason I decided no, we're gonna go for it. And I forgot that I thought it was too dark. And we were looking for houses. I probably just saw two. And I'm like, okay, let's put in an offer. And I've been in it for, I don't know, 7 years or something. And up to now, I think it's too dark. And I'm like, I saw that. Like I saw that when I walked in. So in a way, it's good to take your time and it's good to ask others, but not get stuck there and just kind of, make a decision one way or another. There's one thing that I heard actually not too long ago, and it's maybe it was like in a movie or something, but it really resonated with me. Making a decision towards one thing means that you're making a decision against other things. So people who are stuck, I think to ask your question, if I decide on A, does it mean that I'm deciding against B? And if this like feels good, then I'm gonna go with A. But if this deciding against B doesn't feel good, then maybe I want to question it again.
Great advice. Yeah. All right. Yan?
Yeah, as I was listening to all of you, I see, because I am a one dominant, so also in the body center, so I can feel the energy is very, very similar, just has it's a different expression. So my question would be, I totally get it. Our gut center just has an impulse of all going in. Is that intensity of it? Is that tenaciousness? Where for us, it's not exactly aggressiveness, is that I am committed. It's an expression of commitment and expression of a genuine interest, being so invested in what we feel truly connected to. It's that authenticity, but I know it come across to other people can be overwhelming, can be too aggressive, and it can be too much. And people just can't take it all that in. It's like, it's just too much, basically. And I feel like as an 8, or like, for me, when other people are feeling that way, what would be the most strategic and respectful and also sensitive to an 8's feelings emotionally? Because from a gut center, that you mean well, genuine and authentic. But it can be, like we said, burnout. It can be too much. So it might not be the most wise thing to do, to be that intense, to be all in that quickly. What would be the most effective way for other people to communicate to an 8 that I love to be involved? I feel your authenticity, but how can this energy be a little more soft or subtle? Let me take some time, because I might not ready to just because my energy is just like, people just tell me my energy can just feel like an explosion of tenaciousness and everything. An 8 too, that presence, I find it to be so attractive and so magnetic and full of charismatic, and then I feel like I'm drawn to that. And I'm like, bing, I'm like right there with you in tenaciousness and eye to eye, and let's just do it and engage with each other. But I know that it might not be the really most wise thing to do. It might be too much. So how to respond to that? Other people's need just is like bring us back to a place where we also not to be burned out.
Bob?
If that makes sense.
My favorite example is William Philip Enos, who changed the world. He was a 1. And in the 1850s, he saw traffic patterns were all messed up. And he spent many years studying nature. And he came up with a design for traffic flow and published a book called Rules of the Road, which to this day is used in every nation around the world. It enabled healthy flow. And here's the thing, he then went to the 8s and he shared insights that would enable practical change. He did it on a small scale, but with the buy-in of the eights, it then in turn began to spread from city to city to city. And, you know, it could almost be 20, 30 minutes, but I think ones can be like conciliaries. I hate to refer to the Godfather here, but, you know, like that advisor to help the leaders to see a better, effective way. I feel ones have so much to offer, and it's that process of empowering the power person, or the person who empowers other people, can make a significant change. And you're going to mix in some nines to make sure it's done peacefully, but you know, that's how change in society happens, if for what that's worth.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Zena.
I think what comes up for me in response to Ian's question is it's like a truth, like if, and I love all the ways that you described us. I feel so good about, you know, all these descriptions. It feels so elevated. But I think for me, like being honest, you're just coming in and, you know, and saying, I want to talk to you about something, or something's bothering me, or like we'll take everything. We want the truth, like give it to us like it is. Even if we made a mistake, we'll apologize, we'll feel bad. Like, maybe don't look at the facial expressions, because usually they have that like, don't touch me look, but it's not what's in our body. So so like ignore the facial expression and just come in and be as completely honest as you can be, and we will like be wide open.
I love that you just said the facial expressions. My daughter and I, she brought this to my, she goes, you know, I just have this resting bitch face, and people misunderstand it because I'm open. I'm ready to hear. Heather, did you have something to share? And then we'll go to
I love
Zane's
that. I love
question.
that because I experienced that, because you guys, you do feel challenged, but you're open. But there's so many other people, oh, they hate confrontation. Anybody feels challenged emotionally, they're just completely like go to the avoidance state. They can't handle any when people feel challenged. And people do. Being challenged is an emotion, it's neutral, unless you're feeling threatened by other people's challenge. But thanks for saying that. So don't be afraid.
By the way, ones actually, I'm afraid of ones. Like ones ones have that like righteousness, like they get really, some of them, the ones I know anyway, I don't know, Ian, maybe you can share your experiences, but like they have that like, how come this is wrong? Or did I like, they worry so much that they might have made a mistake, that now I'm like, I don't know how to deal with it, because they're so worked up over it. And
yes, I do.
It comes into play when there's like, you know, stuff like maybe you're signing a contract with a one, or like stuff like that. It's really difficult to navigate that, because eights want to be flexible and want to be curious, and just be open and stuff. And with ones, it's very, right or wrong, and I have a hard time with that.
I know, I want to be perfect. Freaking get on with it.
I'm gonna have you have to come back for when we do the one panel, because Yen's gonna be sharing on that. But I want to go to Sang. I want to make sure we get his question in. Sang, what's your question?
Hi. I hope this question makes sense. So on the spectrum of the self and the tribe, and I don't know if you understand what I mean by the tribe. I'm guess like, the external, the group. On that spectrum, where do you guys land? And if you err more on one end of the spectrum, what prevents you from going to the other end? I mean, or the middle.
Heather, you were gonna comment last time. Do you want to take this one?
Well, I was going to ask a clarifying question. So when you're talking about the spectrum, are you kind of thinking of it in like aggressive and soft? Like where are the measurements, I guess, if I'm understanding your question correctly?
I I don't really know if it's correlated with aggression or softness. It's more like I'm thinking maybe more like extroverted versus introverted, and correlated with the self and the tribe.
Is it about
Does that make sense?
belonging, Zheng? Is it about belonging? Like you're saying the tribe. So how,
It's like how you habitually function. Maybe some people they're tribe oriented. They always feel this maybe a sense of duty, and they are also natural at like serving the tribe, or doing things oriented to the group. But then there are others that are oriented to themselves, uh, and they do a lot of inner there's an inwardness to them. So does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can answer for myself. I am very extroverted and very tribe-minded. It is not as easy for me to go internally because I'm not, feelings are gross. I don't want to feel feelings. I'll be honest with you. I'm very comfortable with anger, but everything else, I don't want to do it. So my instinct, right, is to go out with my energy. And what that means for me personally is, thinking about the collective community. Like, how is this affecting the community? How is this affecting my family? And so I tend to think in terms of like maybe more systems. When you say the word tribe, that's what I think of. And I think that's because I'm more comfortable in that space when the energy is directed at someone else or some problem to fix or some process to do. Being a social eight means that it's very easy for me to set aside any of my like personal gain. I know that's probably weird to say is to hear from an eight. I am protective of myself, but I don't spend a lot of energy. Most of my energy is going outward to others, how things are affecting everyone. Because I tend to think in terms of if everybody is good, like community wise, then we're all good. But
yeah,
that's I'm the counter type, so that's not typical of a lot of eights.
I think it has to do with the subtype. Because as a self-preservation aid, I really want to be left alone. I go inside a lot. I stay at home a lot. However, when I am out in public, I am very social. But pretty much, I'm an introvert. Would you agree with that, Nancy? You know
yeah.
me, and Joyce. Hi, Joyce. Welcome. Joyce and Nancy know me fairly well, so
Yeah, I feel that from you. What do you think, Joyce? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. But I am also like that, Justin. I'm
mm,
feel like I'm an introvert, but I act like an
yeah,
extrovert.
yeah, same
Yeah,
thing. But
my
it's a
perception
my
of
subtype.
Justin, I always thought you were an extrovert, but
Uh,
just from hearing you today, I really honor that. I think I identify very much with that. And I just wanted to say something. It was just wonderful to hear from all of you. I've heard about Enneagrams for 15 years. In fact, Justin was the first person who presented it to a group, and right away I thought I was an eight. And then but now I have time to really take all this very seriously. I have time to really, have a lot of introspection and study.
mhm.
But I just wanted to see what I took some test and I came out a one, and yet I feel a part of all of the personality types. And I don't know if it's eight. I mean, is it age wise now? Because I've learned from experience so much, but
That is going to
I do,
flavor.
yeah.
It's going to flavor not your type, but it's going to flavor your journey identifying your type because, and especially with the deep studies that you do with the theosophical, pathway, you have more awareness, so you're going to identify, differently than somebody who's just coming in a more unconscious state.
Mhm.
But I
Okay,
hope
but I
you'll
really,
hang out for the
I
9
will.
the 9 panel. You hear from Annette and hear from Yen about their beautiful lens. And I think Bob's got something to share.
Yeah, as I've studied world religions, I find 3 levels that are all equally important: love of self, love of group or your tribe, and then love of everything. Whether you want to call that all of humanity, all of creation, God, whatever phrase you want to put. But I find those 3 repeated time and time again with the Enneagram. It's with the instinct, the self-preserving, the social, and then the transmitting or sexual, however you want to put it. But I also see it with the harmony triads of David Daniels as I've read through that, because I find particularly the 1s, 7s, and 4s are the most in touch with themselves. I find the 9s, the 6s, the 3s, the tribal, the group, either success for the group, no conflict with the group, or protecting the group. But I find the 852s have an element to go global, to go out there. Please underscore, none of us is just the number that we articulate. We have all 9 parts in each of us. It's just, I think Dr. Siegel says that something has happened in the process that we form a scab, and that scab begins a strength. And that's how we present as a certain number. But the beauty of Enneagram is this enables us to listen to each other, but also listen to each different parts of ourselves. And I think, Carl Jung said, he came up with the concept extrovert, introvert. He said it was the most flexible, that it changes through our lives, through different circumstances or growth. And I hope there's a bit of an answer saying is that I think it is a developing spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. All right. We haven't heard from Susan, Jessica, or Mimi. Do you have anything you want to share real quickly?
This was very helpful. A pastor at church, she's the pastor of care. I can't, the word won't come, but she's a definite 8. And she changes roles. That's what's very confusing, because when she fulfills the role of pastoral care, she's very kind, compassionate, caring, gentle. She also leads a women's Bible study, which there's 29 people. I mean, but for me as a 2, I run from her in those environments because the control comes in, and it's like the care part is not, she just can't do both. So she comes on very controlling and domineering, and I mean, there's a very big level of wisdom, that I respect, but I can't take, the control thing. I avoid those people. But if I'm sick, she demands that I call her because she's hurt if I don't. And she's very good at it. So she's divided the 2.
Have you thought of talking to her, because you might be a healing balm for her?
Yes, because of what you guys said today. I'm like, I really need to go talk to her and explain why I don't participate in that women's Bible study.
It sounds
that
like
the control's freaking me out.
Well, and it sounds like it may be such a huge group that it really she might probably feels like she has to take charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
I
Nancy,
thank you
you
for
lead this
that.
group so elegantly with such love. I mean, the
Yes.
eights can grow into there too, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I like it this small though. When I can't fit you all in the right size boxes on my screen,
Yeah.
it's different. All right, Jessica, anything from you?
There's music going in the background. I do apologize about that. There's construction going on downstairs and he's playing music. But anyway, I had been in 2 long-term relationships with one I'm definitely sure is an 8. The other I am quite sure was an 8. And the controlling issue I had a lot of trouble with. At first, I guess I'm attracted to 8s in the way that um, they do have a lot of wisdom and they do have a big heart, but getting to it's a challenge. But when you finally do, it's exciting and rewarding. But then, reality sets in that they do have that control issue, and I have a big problem with that. And I'm not with an 8 anymore, but there was a lot of conflict in that area with me, them trying to control me. But like I said, I was obviously drawn to something because I had 2 fairly long-term relationships with 8s. So
Do you think it could be the sensitivity of the 7 to keep their options plus the wing of the 7
yeah, yeah,
being an 8?
right.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
I want
fortunate
to,
for the eights that they had a 7 in their life.
yeah. Yeah.
I wanted, if I can just add one final thing, I think it also touches on what Yan was asking earlier. Jessica, I was married to a 1 for 20 years. And what I learned in that relationship was creating a culture of feedback. Um, Ones can, be self-critical and kind of go inside with that. And 8s, we oftentimes are not trying to be critical. We don't realize that that's how it's coming across. And so creating an environment of feedback instead of criticism. And my guidance, when my husband and I were married is like, approach me with a question, not an accusation. And for him, it was kind of the same thing because he would often be like, take it as like internally, like something was wrong with him. So I think that's important not only in personal relationships, but also like in business. When I'm working with someone, I try really hard with my team to create a culture of feedback because I want them to actually give me feedback. And if we're intimidating someone, they're not often willing to do that. So I have to model that by also giving feedback in healthy ways. So
Thank you, Heather. And that gives me a perfect segue at 11:59. I would love to hear feedback from all of you on how was this experience for you as a panelist, but also as an audience member? And then important for me to know from the audience perspective, what is the energy of the overall sense that you gained about 8? So you can email me that, let me know, text it to me. But thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. You all are equally important. And it's 12 o'clock, so I'm going to stop this recording.